Right. Well, hello and welcome to another episode. I'm here with Colleen.
Hello.
And today we are excited to have back Nathalie Jaspar.
Hi, thank you so much for having me again.
Yes, we're so excited to have you. We were talking before we started the recording and we're like, we better get this recording started because Nathalie is just one of those people that you can just talk and talk and talk to. And so we always have great conversations. So we're
We
really
have
glad
so
to have
much
you
to
back.
share.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. And we were on Nathalie's podcast. Gosh, it's been a while now, right, Nathalie?
Actually, we started 2023 with you. I was going to do a year in review. I'm like, who was the first podcast of last year? And I wonderfully started the year with you too. Yes.
Oh, nice. Yes, it was really fun to be on her podcast as well. And that is, since we're talking about it, Dive into Reiki. She has lots of interesting guests and it's really fun and love the format. And we just love Nathalie. So we're glad to have you.
Such a pleasure to chat. Yes.
All right. So we'll go ahead and read your bio. A few announcements for us. Let's see. We are teaching in February. Colleen is teaching. Well, her and I are teaching Reiki 1 and 2. She's co-teaching Reiki Master with Sue Machado from Brazil. They're teaching, all of this is online. And then she's also teaching Karuna Reiki Master. And then we, of course, have our distance Reiki share that's free and every Tuesday morning. And then our social media, you can find Colleen at Reiki Lifestyle and I'm at Robyn Benelli Reiki. Okay. And everything you can find at reikilifestyle.com. All right. So Nathalie Jaspar is a traditional Japanese-style Reiki master with over 15 years of experience. She is a graduate teacher from the International House of Reiki and trained in Zen Buddhism at the, I should have asked how to pronounce this, Chokai-san?
Chokai-san, perfectly. Yes.
Chokai-san International Zendo in Japan. To gain deeper insights into the Reiki system, Nathalie also practices the Japanese martial art of
Iaido.
Iaido. How did I not ask these questions? I always ask. I got just
Most
too excited.
Americans cannot pronounce. It's very strange, like Japanese vowels. Don't worry. Iaido. Yes.
Iaido, in which she holds a second-degree black belt, which is very impressive. In addition to hosting the podcast, Dive into Reiki, Nathalie is the author of Reiki as a Spiritual Practice, an illustrated guide, and the Reiki Healing Handbook. She is currently working on her third book, Infinite Light. Nathalie also frequently contributes to the Reiki Raise Global Summit and website and the Congresso International de Reiki and Touch magazine in the UK. And is that the Congreso Internacional? Where is that?
That is actually the Spanish version of Reiki Race. They do it, it's online, a global thing. So they're doing, I think they did it for the 6th time. So they're finally, the Spanish speaking world is also doing that.
Yay, fantastic. Well, I am really glad that we are, that was in your bio so that we can learn more about that.
Sorry about all the polyglot stuff. Yeah.
No, that's a me problem. That is, that's good. It's my problem for not being able to pronounce it. And also I should have asked, which normally I do. So to find Nathalie, you can find her website is diveintoreiki.com. Her email is Nat Jaspar is JASPAR at mac.com. And then her everything else, her social, her podcast is all Dive into Reiki. So you can find her there. So she's on Facebook, YouTube, Insta, TikTok, so all of that. And then of course her podcast is on all of the major podcasting platforms.
Yes, thank you so much.
All right. Well, welcome. We're so glad to have you back. I'm excited for our conversations. And I know we want to get into a little bit of your story for those of, new listeners that haven't heard our previous podcast or episode with you, and also a little bit about your martial arts and your story as well. But one of the things that I have to say, Nathalie, is that I use your post all the time when we're talking about the embodiment, the body as a part of the spiritual practice, is no body, no enlightenment. that was the post, and it's on your yellow dive into Reiki. And I shared it and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so simple and so true. I loved it. So thank you. I use that example all the time.
You. Yeah, that was for the Portuguese Association. They invited me to give a talk, and the talk was about Buddhism, Reiki, and martial arts. And literally, I was like, "Well, what is this whole talk about?" This, and the whole line was that nobody, no enlightenment. And I feel for us Reiki practitioners, especially in the West, that's not really the way we see. Even though we have hands-on healing with the body, we see sometimes the body is actually on the way of enlightenment. At least that's the way I grew up, with a very strict Spanish Catholic background from Spain. So, that's a little, and perhaps that's a way to jump into my story a little bit and do a little different in my story, because I always repeat the same story. So perhaps I could talk about my spiritual background, the way I grew up, which I
Yes.
haven't ever talked about. If
Whatever is coming through,
Great.
please talk about it. Super fascinating.
So the same way that I'm a polyglot, I also come from a very mixed background. So my mother was born in Madrid. My grandmother was from Cadiz, the south of Spain, very conservative. My grandfather was from the north of Spain, very liberal. They met in Madrid, the middle, and they married. Had my mom. My mom grew up in a very conservative Spain, but she actually was treated like her brothers. And, she was in a very conservative Spain, partying and studying. She even was one of the few women going to university, which she dropped, ended up partying and marrying, but that was her option. And then she met my father, who was her French teacher, and married my father. My father came from a completely different background. My Belgian family was completely non-believer in gods. They were all politicians, diplomats, and finance people. They were the opposite: pleasures of the body, eating, arts, polyglots. And my mom married my father. They moved to Belgium, and so we were born. And then they split 20 years after that. I was the last, so I was very young. And I went from this very neutral environment, no spirituality. We used to fake that we were going to church when my grandma came to visit. We would go to the coffee shop with my great uncle to talk politics. Well, they would. I was 8 years old. They would draw. And then we moved to Venezuela, where I went from like zero spiritual backgrounds, except hiding from going to church, to actually going to that more conservative, very Spanish Catholic background. My grandmother really, she prayed the rosary, and it was very comforting to her. But for me, at 8 years old, suddenly I went and even though I was baptized and everything, but it was more about the party, and my first communion was more about the dress in Belgium. Suddenly I'm immersed in a very Catholic, all my cousins are really believers, and I'm completely confused. But I kind of like it because they were singing at the church. I'm like, okay, we're singing. I'm liking it. But at the same time, as I grow up, I had my Belgian family brain, which questions a lot. Why are these people being so rigid about the rules, but they're poor people outside starving? So I was literally born with my great uncle's brain, and, I questioned everything. So for me, spirituality became very confusing. The other thing that really affected me in Venezuela is that, spirituality was against the body. So everything that was about the body was sinful, right? So I became very intellectual, because the body was either you were very pretty as a woman with curves, which I didn't have. I had a Northern European body, flat. I still very flat, but I'm chesty as I will get. I was literally like a table, and I developed at 15 when everybody in the Caribbean developed at 10. I had a long nose, so I wasn't like a beauty ornamental woman that could get well married either. I care about physics, mathematics, and history, not very attractive. So my body wasn't really attractive as an ornament. So it was just sinful. Literally my body was useless, and it will get in the way of spirituality or anything else, right? So my body, the way I came to understand true social influence, was either to be controlled, dominated, hidden, or forgotten. So I became a person who lived outside my body, or actually fix it through makeup, hid it, but my body wasn't really worth very much, right? My intellect, my wit, my grades, I had super good grades. I went to university at 16, finished at 21 after 5 years. That was worth something, my mind. the body really wasn't. And in Venezuela, I don't know if you know, but they have all these Miss Venezuelas and Miss Universe. They literally make them. If you're tall enough, they will put boobs on you. They will put butts, like they will operate and machine make women, right? So it was a society as that the body is either to make you into an ornament or is like on the way of spirituality. And we have a lot of Hare Krishnas. Again, then you will take away everything. So the body was never something comfortable I was with. I'm also not very coordinated. So I wasn't really good at sports. So I didn't have that either. So I probably was one of the most ungrounded person, and I have ADD. So for me, it was like a lot of factors. And so I moved to the States, work in advertising. Again, I also have a great amount of things. My ADD and being intellectual gave me jobs. I was a polyglot. So I came to the States. I was able to get a bunch of like jobs. I got a visa. I really went well, made a career, got my visa, got my citizenship, thrived. But then stress hit. I got into Reiki, right? And I got into Reiki at Google, found a few trainings, loved it. But I got into a very ungrounded Reiki, right? A Reiki that didn't have a lot of like breathing techniques. And probably, Colleen and Robyn, you're more familiar to like the shamanic part about being in your lower belly into being into the womb that grounds you into your body, right? A lot of the Reiki when I learned, especially in the early 2000s, were very much about the third eye and the vision and going with the guides, very, very heavenly. So what happened is I was already out of my body. I went even more out of my body and I became very emotionally unstable. But also my practice will give a lot of sensations and beautiful vision, but it didn't transform my life. My life didn't improve. So I love my Reiki practice. It gave me a lot of joy and stories to tell, but my life literally didn't improve very much. Yes, I will relieve a headache. Yes, I will give session to people and they will feel relaxed. But let's say that my job was a little bit better. I had to quit my job because I couldn't deal with it. Like I had like some emotional releases, but I started practicing Reiki at 31 until 42. I had this little improvement. So this is my story before the body part entered.
Yeah, interesting.
I did have some fun. I made it very tragic, but this is just to understand where I was.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. Okay, so we'll keep going.
Okay. So then
Because I want to
I
hear also the change,
changed. So, and again, I had a lot of fun with my Reiki practice, a lot of people, and I have to say I had a great life. I've traveled, like I had so many gifts. But then I took a sabbatical from my job. Advertising is very high stress. I was working like sometimes 90 hours a week. I traveled everywhere, beautiful hotels, but I literally didn't even know where I was anymore, which also doesn't help with grounding and being in your body. So I took a sabbatical and I'm walking my dog and I wanted to do something. I felt also my Reiki practice was very good when I was still, like if I was like meditating or placing my hands on someone on a session, I was very happy. But then if I was like on the street, someone screaming or work, I couldn't really feel the benefits as much. And I was like, oh, what if I could have that stillness of Reiki, that beautiful sensation when I'm at work or when I'm walking or if someone is screaming at me in the subway in New York City, right? Because again, New York City is not, you guys live with space and in your cars with air conditioning. Here, things are a little bit rougher. So I'm like, oh, maybe if I do Qigong or something in movement, right? I had done yoga, but I don't know, I was like tired of yoga. So I was looking for martial arts, but I was in a sabbatical. So I'm like, oh, I was looking for something more affordable and serendipity. I've been a lucky person my whole life. I have this feeling my grandmothers are taking care of me. Always, every time I get in trouble, something happens and I get saved. Like I'm being very, very lucky. So I'm walking my dog and I see these people with Japanese uniforms, right? Like, and people of every color, every race, every style, and there are a couple of women, they're outside taking a break. I'm like, and I see Zen Institute, which I have no idea what it means. I'm like, ooh, there is this thing here, and it's 4 blocks away from my house, no subway. I'm gonna Google it. So I come back, I Google it, it's like swords. I'm like, no way. I'm so scared of knives, even knife work. There is no way I'm gonna do a sword. And in the same way that once I did a Reiki class, even though I didn't like my first Reiki class, it got stuck in my head. And until I didn't take a second or third class, I would not, like, I had Reiki, 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 swords, swords. I'm like, there is no way. I'm a girl. I'm like, light. What do you mean? All these guys were like swords, like Japanese swords are huge. They're not tiny swords, they're like very big. And then I'm like, okay, listen, they're 4 blocks away. I emailed them. They say, oh, you can come and watch a class for free. You can even take a class for free. I'm like, oh, well, I'll go. It's 4 blocks away from my home. So I go there and I sit in this little corner, and there are like 20 people with those huge swords. And you have to sign a waiver that if they kill you by mistake, you're not going to sue the place where you practice. Is called dojo. And
Like, this is for me.
No. I was like, oh, I'm like, okay, I'm sitting here, like, really taking my feet everywhere. You know, I'm not a very brave person. Like,
yeah.
I'm actually, I look more brave than I am. I do things, but I'm always scared. I'm a scaredy cat. So I'm there, and they start cutting. Sorry, now I'm gonna need a little bit of tea. That is the fear coming through. I'm actually gonna need a pause a little bit. Hold on.
No problem. Okay, so we're back. So just so everybody knows, Nathalie came down with a bit of a cold last night, so sometimes we're going to have to pause so she can take a moment. And but Nathalie, we're appreciative that she's still joined us today.
Thank you.
So you had just gone into the dojo and signed a waiver.
I signed a waiver that if I die, I will not sue the dojo, the practice place. So I'm sitting there in a corner, and then I see all these people, and the uniforms are all black, and everybody's dressed the same. So you leave your identity behind. And they're starting to just wave and doing these cuts. And the sword has a voice, just a very, very simple swish. And the practice is very silent. So the room goes silent, and the only thing you hear is perhaps a sensei saying a few words in Japanese to direct the practice, and you only hear the swish of the sword. And it was such a piece. They did that for 2 hours in different variation of movements. And it was almost like a dance in emptiness. And it was so beautiful. And obviously the beginners were a little weird, but when you saw the senseis, there was such a unity of movement of body and sword, but you could also feel their energy when they were moving. And I fell in love with it, and I signed up that same day. And I'm not talented for it at all. And it makes sense. I don't have coordination. I've lived out of my body for 40 something years at that point. And I really didn't understand anything. Most of those people have done some kind of sport before. And also, I love makeup, love little heels and dresses. And I will come every day with my little heels. And my sensei is like, oh, it's you again. You're back. They were very surprised at me going there. And I have to say, it changed my life. It brought me into my body. The thing I didn't expect is that it will really change my understanding of Reiki practice. I don't know why I never made the connection when they say Mikao Usui comes from a samurai a family, that his martial arts inform his practice. I also, when I was in Japan, I went after that. People are really comfortable in the body. I went to the spa, the onsen. I went to the one that separate men and women because I couldn't be naked in mixed environments. I'm not that brave. I was already very uncomfortable the first day being naked with a bunch of women. They're comfortable being naked. They're really comfortable in their bodies. By day 3, I was going around naked with all those women. They're really comfortable being in their bodies. It's a completely different culture than ours. And being in the dojo also, learning how to move your body and pay attention to your body. Like, for example, they will say, like, move your feet behind your leg, right? I'm like, can you feel your feet back? I'm like, no, I don't know if it's in the right place. I couldn't feel my feet. I didn't know where they were placed. Learning where your foot or your feet is, your feet are, I guess. Sorry about that grammar mistake. Like, for example, they say, like, you have to move up your left hip. And I realized I cannot feel my left hip. So ironically, the more you send your mind to your body, the more you learn to feel your body. And then I realized, well, what are we doing then with hands-on healing? What are we feeling? What are we noticing? Are we noticing our hands, or are we noticing the relationship between our hands and our body? So this made me question a lot of things and also change the way I practice hands-on healing. And also when we're drawing the symbols, for example, with what are we drawing the symbols, right? So also in martial arts, there is, for example, this is called Kiken Taichin. What I do is unity of body, mind, and sword. You don't just move, you move in unity of everything that you are with the sword. The sword is the element that brings everything together. And at the beginning of my practice, for example, we do Rei Ho, which sounds very similar to Rei Ju, which is, the attunement, that's Japanese name for attunement. And we become one with the sword. That's the way we start the practice, which we become one with wisdom. But it's your body doing the bowing. It's your body and your mind. So the body is part of your practice, right? Like without your body, there is no unity. So these things were really like, wait a moment, in Reiki, we always talk about the mind. And in my case, and probably not, you are more shamanic, so you probably were more in your body. But I know a lot of my students, they want to be one with the universe, but they're not one with their body. They want to diet. They don't feel comfortable with the way they look. They still feel uncomfortable because they have acne or because they're a little short. They don't love their body. They are not in their bodies, or they're like, they want to escape into voyages. And I'm like, wow, we have to first be one with our bodies because before we can be one with the universe, right? Like if we're not here fully aligned, that's the first step. So nobody, no enlightenment, but not only for martial arts is even more. It's like, this is the body through we feel the universal energy. It's literally through this body, the universe is flowing. So without body, there is no alignment. Like literally, there is no body, no alignment. So I realized I've been escaping the body in my spiritual practice. I've been seeing it because I've been seeing it like this is the place where sin takes place, or I cannot travel my astral traveling because I'm in my body. I cannot go to heaven because I'm in a body. That was my belief. When actually the body is my place for enlightenment. Like this is where things take place, transformation takes place. And what I've seen since I started doing martial arts and I was probably 44, I just turned 51. My life has transformed every year. And I cannot recognize the person I am. I am Nathalie. But every year consistently, I can see growth. I can feel my heart expanding. I still get angry. I'm still pretty much me. I still do some of the same mistakes. I'm not perfect, but I can see a transformation. My life is a lot better. I have a lot more love. I'm kinder to myself. I'm kinder to others. Like I can see a big change. And this body, last year in February, after interviewed you, I had a big surgery and I have scars. I show my scars in a bikini, and I had Reiki and I'm impressed by the power of the body. I do hands-on healing. My body tells me insights I never even imagined how much wisdom there is in my body. So my body is my first partner. Like, yes, I partner in sessions with people, but my body has become an equal partner. It's not a lesser thing. I fix, I heal, I take away headaches. My body has so much wisdom, sometimes more than my brain, a lot more than my regular brain, honestly. So for me, it's an equal partner. And I think Japanese culture has it a little bit more aware, at least traditional Japanese people, older people. That onsen I went to was in a little town of fisher people. And they were a little bit scared because I had never seen a naked white woman with them, all hairy. So, they were very patient with me. They would have been in a shock as well, like, white woman naked! But, perhaps modern Japanese are having these issues too. They're very much in their heads, their cell phone, all of that. But in their culture, there are things that we don't understand because for them, they're given. And in our culture, it's a given, especially when I grew up in my grandmother was born in 1905 in the south of Spain. So her conception of the body in the south of Spain in that time is very different even from modern Spain or than when I was born in the 70s, right? So I think it's interesting for us all to check, like, what is the conception of my body? And I go around and I see it. I still see a lot of people changing their bodies to satisfy others, right? Taking pills to forget they're in their bodies and going to transform altered state of minds and get out of their bodies. So I still think our culture is not really fully embracing their bodies. And I hope I made sense and I didn't ramble too much.
No, it's really fascinating. I'm curious before now you are aware of your body and being in it, were you aware that you were not in your body before? Or was that a revelation that has occurred over time?
I was not aware. I had the idea that being in my body was being well dressed. This is shameful. And thank you for asking that question, because the answer, although shameful, is impressive. Like for me, being in my body was to have very good makeup on, having my hair done and my nails well done. So I'm realizing what a concept I had of what being in my body was. I think the first time I was aware, I started martial arts, and I also met a person who was my therapist for a while, and then we decided we prefer to be friends than therapists. And she was doing some somatic therapies, and this is something like a new kind of therapy where they are like really teaching people how to get with the wisdom of the body. And she one day did something like, so I would be grounded in my body, and I felt completely different. I said, "What is this?" She's like, "You're in your body." Oh, I'm like, "Oh, my mind is not going crazy, and I feel different." And then a few days after, obviously, I was out and I could feel energetically. I was like 2 inches over. And I called her. I'm like, "Oh, I'm out again." And she told me, like, "Can you feel your bones? Can you go down?" And then I literally fell back. So I started noticing the difference. And as you notice the difference, then you know when you're out or in. I still go out a lot. And yesterday, for example, we have a mindfulness class of our martial arts for some of us who are more inclined to this kind of reflection and energy and key work of the martial arts. And some of us have this experience of going to a dojo and then feeling settled in our bodies afterwards, especially people who work in creative fields. At our dojo, we have a lot of artists, and they come to a dojo. I'm a creative advertising, but like literally like painters, sculptors, a lot of them, especially female artists from Japan. And they come to a dojo and they feel that same thing. We go back, we ease back into our bodies. So we arrive a little frazzled, high energy, a little bit over, and then we settle back in the body. And when we leave the dojo, everything is sharper. So now I know when I'm in my body, everything is clear. My energy is in my belly. I walk differently. I don't walk like with my feet up. I walk in my hips. I am calm. I see life clearly, and honestly have a feeling that everything is right with the world. No matter what is happening, and we all know nothing is right with the world right now. But I feel like I am fine no matter what. So that is for me being in my body. And even the colors and the lights, I go out in New York at night, everything is just crisp. And that for me is being, when mind and body are together, that's where I am.
How does it, how has it, or how does it influence your Reiki practice, even in the way that so there's the self practice, but then there's also like the teaching practice. So how does it influence in the way that you talk about Reiki, teach about Reiki, understand Reiki?
I think the way I'm teaching it is, first, I think it depends on the level, right? So for my Reiki 1 people, the first thing I do, self-healing, you're not fixing your body. You're also not healing. I think self-healing protocol for me, and this is a very, very personal journey. And I think where I am, a lot of people have trouble with self-healing. They struggle with this idea of healing the self. Who's doing the healing? I am doing the healing. I'm coming with words across self-healing, also self-examining and self-listening. So if your body is your equal partner, listen to it. Pay attention to it. What is your body telling you? What is your heart telling you? What is your shoulder? Appreciate your shoulder. Give it space. And that for me, for my students, especially the ones who have trouble understanding, like, who am I to have this beautiful energy, is really good. For people who have issues with self-image, is also beautiful. What is your shoulder telling you? Can you give a little bit of self-love to your skin? Can you give a little bit of self-love to that belly? I'm also working with a lot. I stopped perimenopause because I literally had to take everything out because of health issues. There's a lot of perimenopause women. That little belly we get is actually your body trying to balance your hormones and keep the estrogen there. So understanding that your body is actually trying to help you, not destroy your silhouette. understanding your body is actually trying to bring balance and helping you with that little belly you hate so much. So can you place your hands there and understand that and talk to your little belly and be thankful it's bringing balance, and telling it also to perhaps shrink a little bit, have that dialogue, like, give and take. But understanding your body is really trying to keep you well. Like, even the parts you hate. And if you hate something, your knee, your thighs, just perhaps hold the space for your hate for your thighs and see what happens. Like, don't do just hands-on healing, fix thighs. That's not what Reiki is about. Reiki is about hold space for your feelings. If you have an issue with a part of your body, let's have a dialogue. It's your partner. If you're having stomach troubles, yes, of course you can do healing and it will improve your digestion. But if you keep eating pizza every day like I do when I shouldn't, it's going to keep repeating. Perhaps have a conversation with your stomach. I love you. I'm going to eat pizza every so often and I'm going to use Reiki to heal you. But what do you want to eat? What should I eat for us to be in balance together? And some days I'm going to have pizza. Brings me pleasure. But what should we eat? Right? So how can we do Reiki so that we understand first of all, this is your body. This is you. But how can you listen to yourself? Right? Because we listen to everyone. We seldom listen to ourselves. So self-healing is also giving ourselves the space to love ourselves, to listen to ourselves. So the way I'm teaching Reiki 1 is very much about creating that space versus just doing a protocol that is very repetitive. And some people just need to repeat and relax, and that is fine. That is also fine. There is no right or wrong. But for some people, this is what we need. We need the space to listen to ourselves. There are so many voices. People on Instagram are telling you what to do. Your friends are telling you what to do. The gurus, the life coaches. But do you ever listen to yourself? So for me, it's really your body is there to help you. So if you have an issue with anything in your body, listen.
I have a question before we continue with how you're, kind of teaching. So I'm just interested in the shift in from your perspective, like the shift in perspective of our body as a house for our spirit. How would your perspective, I feel like your perspective would be a shift in that statement? And how you're understanding that unification within the body. Does that question make sense?
It makes sense. And I love that you ask it. I think the body is the way for the spirit to express itself to you. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Without a body, you cannot listen to your spirit. You cannot leave the spirit.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's the way I feel it. Almost like when you listen to your body, you're listening to your spirit. They're not separate. And I think when I say unity of my spirit and body, which may be language more familiar to Pete, what I mean is my spirit and body are the same thing. They're not separate. So no body, no enlightenment, no spirit, no enlightenment. Like they are one and the same. So
a house almost feels like then there's a little bit of a separateness in that statement, because almost like spirit is greater than body in that statement.
Exactly. And that's
what you're saying where they're not.
They're no greater. That literally in this plane, the spirit comes to life through your body and they're equal. There is no, it's literally spirit decided to come through life and they talk to you through your body, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just a house. It's
yes.
not
walls.
Yeah. And the wall fell down. Let me repair the wall. Every cell of your body is an expression of spirit. And that's the way we should treat the body, with the same respect we treat spirit, because it is spirit. Again, I may change my take on this in a few years, but that's the way I'm living it now. And it's
absolutely.
It's been very useful for me. It's been very beautiful. I think also there's very little to lose,
I think it's beautiful. I think there was a pause because I could see Colleen wanted to, she was unmuted her microphone. So,
well, I was just going to say, I remember I actually have a specific memory of that realization that you're just speaking of. And I think I used to always think of the body as a house for my spirit. And then it was, but my body is in my spirit. It's not, they're not separate. And I think that the teaching around separation from self, separation from body, from mind, from spirit, separation from each other, the earth, is so strong within us that it's one of the significant places of both healing and empowerment when we move beyond separation and into, even the word unification indicates that there was some kind of separation that needed to unify. So there, they can, and that's in my Reiki practices with my guides. When we've had these discussions, they've been, well, you can't be separate. It's not possible. If you were separate from your spirit, where is it? It's like, where is it? If you're separate from your soul, where is it? It's not somewhere else. But we have so much teaching, like you say. I was also raised Catholic, although not strict Catholic like you were, but also that teaching of getting somewhere else. The spiritual goal was to get somewhere else, to get to spirit somewhere else. And I think I'm with you with how Reiki has taught us that it's being here with us, with ourselves, because this is where we are. We live here. We intended to come here, with our, I don't think it's random that we're just thrown to earth and now we're here. But our spirit is here knowing it was going to come here and be here. So it is about being here and being embodied.
And it's not a lesser thing. Yeah, it's just a beautiful experience, and then whatever happens next. And then in Reiki too is also beautiful. I don't know if you had those students that they love to draw those symbols like they're on a Ferrari as fast as they can. And they do it with the tip of the fingers, or they're like a Picasso.
Okay, I'm going to be completely honest. Sometimes guilty. I mean, I love the times when I'm in the practice, but I'm going to be completely honest when I'm like, okay, I got to, quick get this Reiki flowing, or, I'm like,
Reiki on.
And then other times is when I'm like, yeah, Reiki on, but then other times is when I'm taking my time. So 100% honest with you, Nathalie.
But also you've been practicing for years, right? So in your head, and you're there, right?
Yeah.
So but when they're starting, it's like, so I'm also teaching people who, for example, imagine you're drawing a symbol, right? And I'm going to do let's do a triangle, right? Because I don't know who can listen to this podcast. So I have them do the triangle with the tip of the fingers. Then I'm like, okay, now do the triangle with your whole body. And now do the triangle with the space around you. They do a triangle. And now put the layers all together. So they learn also how to use their perception to have a stronger presence, right? Because when you have your body, you can also have a stronger presence. If you use the tip of your fingers, it will work, but that presence, it's a little smaller. As a Reiki too, you probably may have a professional stuff, so you want that body to be part of your presence. So mind has presence. Energy goes where the mind goes. But when you bring everything you are, and everything you are has a lot more, if you have like a lot more body. And when I'm doing a Reiki session, my head, everything. I'm like aware and I'm putting everything. So we're same with the symbols. If I'm doing an attunement, if I don't have like 10 students and I'm in a rush, yeah, probably I'll do it fast, but then my mind is already in the space, right? But when I'm teaching a student a symbol for the first time, I'm going to do that symbol with like everything I am, like from head to toe. All my energy is in that thing. So I'm using them to use the energy of their whole body when they do something. Because what I want them is their energetic presence to really be stronger. And to also, I also want them to learn, like, okay, how does it feel when you're using little presence, more presence, and also use the space around them, which is a different conversation. But in Japan, the space is not empty. And that's in martial arts. You see all those movies where they're jumping around and using the space around them to do fights. So in martial arts, we do some exercise like this, and there's a moment you can actually feel the thickness of the air. So you can use also that energy. So I teach some of my students Reiki to start feeling it, because why are you not using a Reiki session? Why are you going to use just yours? I use the whole freaking room in a Reiki session. So I teach how to use like all your presence, but also invite the space around you and as much as you can for sessions and for symbols. So that's been a lot of playing with the body, or doing, for example, dry bathing. People also do cha-cha, dry bathing, hands, sa. It's almost like Macarena, like. I'm like, no. What happens when you do dry bathing with your whole body? And then I make them do dry bathing very slow, using the whole body and stay in the space. And they're like, oh, this feels like a meditation, almost like in a space of attunement. So when we start doing every element of the Reiki system with a full body, something starts to shift. And then you're like, oh, maybe I don't need to add 1,500 new modalities. I don't need to learn the essence, the herbal essence. I don't need to have 10 gongs. Maybe I just need to add my whole body. So, and maybe, yes, I still want to use the sound bowls. But first, like really, really explore those elements the way they're meant to, using your whole body. Of course, Mikao Sui did it. The guy practiced martial arts since he was 12. He knew how to use their body. Many of us may not. Like he never tried bathing like we do, you know. He didn't do the Macarena. He saved himself from the Macarena. Although I'm sure they had some Japanese like equivalent in the 1920s.
Well, what's interesting, Natalie, is when you talk about it, I can feel it. So when you were talking about the when you were in the dojo for the first time, and you could, you were talking about the sound of the sword, you could feel that emanating from you. And when you are talking about that process of using your whole body, using the space, when you're drawing the symbols, you can actually feel that kind of emanate from you. So it's just really interesting that you're able to, we're literally across the country from each other. And that, obviously this energy, all of this also transcends space and time. However, that's a really interesting aspect that I've noticed throughout talking to you in this, this time frame, is that you can feel it. And I think it is from that kind of whole body perspective.
And it's tons of fun too, because we're going to practice, hopefully, Reiki our whole lifetime, right? So also, how can we keep our practice alive and deepen our understanding? So we need to have angles. For some people, it will be other stuff. For me, how can we adapt and use our bodies and elements like space around us? There are very simple elements we have to deepen our practice. For you, Colleen, I know the shamanic elements have brought you so much depth into Reiki knowledge, right? Yes. And you two have done that. And also, obviously, you have also the Karuna and the Holy Fire. So that has brought a lot of depth into your practice. And I think we have to choose who we are. For me, obviously, because of my family history, I think the embodiment was so important. Because honestly, looking back, I'm like, how can I come from a family who was so disembodied, right? Like I can see my mom, literally, she lives in a Sudoku. Like she's happy in a Sudoku world, and she plays on the iPad. She's 89 and she's iPad addicted, right? She loves iPad. So I think we have that. I think what we have to find is what is going to help us deepen our practice. I think for people who lives in cities, especially cities, and as we move into a world that seems, I don't know, they are drunk with craziness and madness, being in our bodies is something that may help us navigate these very unstable times with a little bit more compassion and kindness towards others. Another thing that I seem to feel as I'm more in my body, I'm less judgmental and less angry to others. Sometimes I'm even compassionate towards politicians, which freaks me out a little bit. I don't know how that is happening, but it like sometimes I'm like, oh, and it's not like that bitter, like, yeah, that's because he is afraid or he has a bitter childhood or whatever. It's like, is that sensation, Colleen, you were saying, I'm not that separate. Like I'm literally, those people are part of me. And it's not just talk, it's starting to feel very physical, literally. And when that part is yours, then you're like, Well, that is almost like my little finger. So I better start being compassionate because my little finger is misbehaving, right? So you're a lot nicer to your little finger. That's something that is very separate. So what is very strange is by working on my embodiment, and that you will think is very self-centered and very limited, I'm actually feeling closer to others, uh, as separate as, presidents of other countries or these countries, or that could not be more opposite than actually me becoming closer to my body. So sometimes we think we can bring world peace by getting angry online and doing speeches, but perhaps by being more in our bodies, ironically, we become more compassionate to those people. And that for me has been a surprise development in the last 3 months, one that I'm still not completely comfortable with. Hopefully next year I'll be more comfortable with it, but I'm a little surprised. I'm like, that feels a little strange. Like when you kiss a boy you don't like when you're 14, and then you have that feeling of, what was that?
Well, I think the interesting piece with being in your body is the ability to hear yourself and being able to listen. It's one of the things that we do a lot with teaching, of understanding that your whole body has perspective. So, for instance, your root chakra has a perspective, your second chakra has a perspective. And each chakra, each part of your body has a perspective. And learning how to listen to every perspective and learning how to operate from that place of listening is so beneficial. I know that a lot of what brought me to some of that whole understanding was how many people in these modalities talk about, I have to get out of my head and into my heart. And so then they're in their heart and the head's going, wait a minute, I have something to say about this. And so, really then when I was investigating that idea spiritually and physically, it showed me that, well, the root chakra is like, well, I have something to say about that. And the second chakra, I have something to say about that. And each part of us needs to have an equal voice that we're listening to. And so if we are connected to our whole body, we can actually hear ourselves. And in my perspective, after, I've been teaching this between shamanic work and Reiki work for over 20 years, 25 years now. And I really believe that is the main thing that is at the bottom of what everybody is looking for, is how do they find themselves so they can hear themselves, feel themselves, experience themselves. And so I just love this message that you're giving about being in the body, because this is where we are. There it is.
And there is no escape. So even it's there is no healthy escape, at least, even biologically. And also it's funny. So there is this man who lives in this building, right? And I live in a building in Harlem, and there are people who've been living here, like it was a rent control, who've been living here for years. And then there are people like me who came because the rest of the city was expensive and we pay more rent. So you have really a mismatch of the city. And this man, he must be in his late 20s and he's on a wheelchair. Something happened to him. And he has one eye here, one eye there. Like, he's a little bit weird looking, right? But he's a sweetie, Liam. And if you look at him objectively, you will say, well, his body's broken. He cannot walk. Like, his eyes here and there. You talk to that man, I've never seen someone so beautiful. Honestly, Liam is a beautiful human. So we worry so much about the body, but, and a little bit about the house of the spirit. His spirit is beautiful, and he is beautiful, and it doesn't matter where his eyes are pointed to. Liam is one of the most beautiful humans that grace the planet. And I think that's what we have sometimes. We're so scared of people seeing us. It doesn't matter if our knee is a little bit crooked or if we have blue skin color. when we are connected to that heart, like Liam is, we're the most beautiful human beings. And I think for me, that is the message. Nobody in alignment. And when we're in our bodies, that light shines through. Like Liam here. Like Liam is the light of the building. Like the other day, he says, like, thank you for talking to me. And I'm like, thank you for talking to me. Like, and then he started laughing. Like, I said, like, you're the light of this building. And then he shines double, right? Like, if we had more souls like Liam in the world, we would be in a different place.
Mhm.
So I think for us, that for me, the body is so important, and not the judgment. It's just allowing the spirit to live through every cell of our bodies, understanding how precious every cell is. And don't get me started on all the little people living on us, because that's my nerd part that I heard on science. But we also have a whole ecosystem. It's not even us. It's a bunch of little cells that live on us are keeping us alive. And we're like a whole universe in ourselves. But again, in martial arts, they feel that the universe flowed through our body. So every person alive is keeping the universe alive, flowing through us. So, when Mikao Sui said we are the universe and the universe is us, he wasn't being, someone posted recently on one of my posts, you're a narcissist. And I was a little bit slow. I should say, first of all, I didn't say that it was Mikao Sui. But no, it's just a Japanese belief of martial arts and Mikao Sui and spirituality. And it's true. The universe flows through all of us. It's a Buddhist belief. It's not even, and it's a beautiful thing. And whenever we get angry with ourselves, like, let's remember that beautiful universe flows through every one of our bodies. And I think that is why we have to be in our bodies, because that's where the universe is. And we're allowing that magic to flow through us. And then it reaches other people. And that's the only reason we're here, to allow other people to benefit from that beautiful energy flowing. And I think now I did ramble, but it's okay.
No, not at all. I think too, so many of us have the curiosity to understand the workings of the universe. I'm one of those people. It's these questions that I have. It's this fascination that it's fun. It does pique my curiosity. It does bring me joy to explore it and to understand it. And as you were talking, I was like, and also understanding the universe through our body, right? That you could explore that too, as you were saying. I think that about that all the time, the universe within our body, like to our little people, our gut bacteria, just as an example, like we're their universe. And there was a Disney movie that came out not too long ago. I want to say it's based on a book or something. Anyways, it's called like Strange New World. And sorry for the spoiler alert, but the whole thing is they're going through this, and it turns out that they just live on a giant creature that kind of looks like a turtle. And that was the whole, end of we're a part of this being. And, we are also a part of this being of the universe, right? It's like, who's to say we're not the little gut bacteria? Maybe we're gut bacteria. I think that's all the time, this fractaline idea of creation. But that also the exploration of the universe is also the exploration within, because we are the universe, and there is an exploration within the body. There is an exploration within the universe within us. And not even to say that it's separate, that there's like this within and without, or within or without. It's just this idea of that fractaline piece of everything that we can explore in all multidimensional spaces.
And even, again, in a selfish way, right? My work at work, because I'm more in my body, I'm more calm. People feel it. I get better projects, right? I'm getting this I was talking to Colleen about, I get to interview people from all walks of life and do video, which is the job I always wanted to do. But before I was a journalist, and now do this actually with a company that pays me in a way I can afford rent, because journalists, poor things, I was like almost starving. And that's because I'm calm. I have better friends than I had before, because I have boundaries. So when you're in, when I tell you, like, also my life has improved, it has literally improved because I'm in my body. So you have boundaries, but at work you are settled. People can rely on you. You become almost like this stone, and not the stone like proudly, like everybody depends on me. You need to be needed. No, like this almost island of calm that you know that in the middle of a world that is going crazy, you can get good jobs because you're gonna give them on time. You're not gonna get like in your head. You're actually going to do the work you need to do. You're not going to suffer when you don't need to suffer. That means you have time to also see your friends. You know, you're going to live in a place that is decent. You're not going to date the wrong people. You know, like little by little, your life improves because your body also, part of it is age. You cannot take all the craziness either. But because you're listening to your body and you're listening to yourself, as Colleen said, you know, you're also giving yourself the right choices. And people feel that when you are settled and you're this rock of stability and, you know, as stable as you can be in New York, people really feel that and they respect that, and you attract something completely different, and you give yourself and treat yourself completely different. So the healing, when I talk about that, the transformation happens. So even in a selfish way, you get rewards. And I'm not talking about, hey, Nathalie was in the body and she got millions, and now she has like this guy in a Jaguar that is flying her around the world. No, no, no. It's little transformations, but I live in a place I like. I found a neighborhood I like. It's modest, multicultural. I'm very happy here. I have a group of friends I deeply respect, bring a lot of joy into my life. I've lost quite a few friends. It was painful, but I have more space for the people I love. I found a man I'm hopefully marrying this year that I deeply love and I feel grateful for. I dated quite a few that were a lot of fun as well. I have a job that I enjoy thoroughly. I have my very bad days, but in general, I'm grateful I have it. And I don't think I've been so grateful in my life for all the changes that are happening. Do I have bad days, rough days? Yes. Do I have days where I'm like, oh my God, this is too much? Yes. But in general, the outcome is so beautiful and I'm so grateful. Will I have tell you this 10 years ago? No. Like, honestly, no. I would have said, yes, my life is good, sort of. And now I can tell you, even in the bad times, I can still see the good times. Like, sometimes I can tell you I'm having a bad week, but I know my life is very good. Like, I went to a big surgery last year. I was calm. You know, I was eating Japanese food, watching TV. Like, okay, I was doing Reiki on myself, which is freaking amazing what your body can do with Reiki and how fast it can recuperate. But I was calm. I did my things. It wasn't a drama. And that for me is very important. You know, I was very aware of what I could do. I didn't push myself like I always did. I waited to go back to the dojo. I was dying to go back, but I waited my 2 months and a half. I worked with my sensei to be actually thoughtful, unlike what I'd done before. I would have like pushed it. So I think also it happens. And I think sometimes we say Reiki manifestation, and we think if we do Reiki and then I'm gonna be in my body, like Nathalie said, then miracles will happen and I'm gonna be a millionaire and marry a prince. I have my prince, but my prince is a guy who lives 6 blocks away. And the miracle is he loves me the way I am. He's not scared when I bring a sword at home. And for my birthday, I want to go to a cemetery tour at midnight, right? He literally likes me like I am. And that for me is a big gift. So I think also, yes, big gift, but we also have to keep grounded on what those transformations, those gifts are. You know, for me, they're priceless. But yeah, I'm not buying you a mansion anytime soon.
Well, the other thing I hear with you too is perception and how you're also choosing your perceptions of your life, and that improves. And I think perception is a body. It's not just a mind, it's a whole body place. And, you know, speaking of that whole body, I remember in one of the sessions that I was doing, and it was showing me when people are imbalanced in their body, how maybe one of the chakras has the loudest voice and it's yelling, and the rest of them can't speak up. And so this is all metaphorical, of course, but it was showing how, you know, one of the chakras just had all the attention of the mind, And it was so loud, nothing else had any voice. Nothing else was able to speak up. And so it was showing how that balance of perception, allowing your whole body to have a voice, and how that shifts your perceptions. So, and we were just talking about that in the podcast this morning. And then also, it's been this whole topic this whole week, about how comparison, because that's the other thing you brought up originally, is the idea of comparing your body to others. And I brought that up that, in my lifetime, that was probably my biggest area of comparison, was body image.
Wow.
And yeah, oh yeah. And, kind of the opposite of you, where I was rounded but I always thought I was fat. And then I look back and it was like,
There's
it
no
wasn't.
winning.
And it wasn't. And
It was
how
not-
much time and limitation I put on myself over that. And that body image and perception, and how different that is now. And like you say, some of it is age. I'm 66 now, and I'm like, well, whatever. But it still has been a major change with Reiki, because I think it takes us also to loving ourselves, hearing our entire self. We can hear from all parts of us. It's not just our mind screaming at us, or fear screaming at us, or different perceptions screaming at us. It's like that calm that comes in from that ability to be embodied and to hear ourselves and perceive from that place.
Yeah. And when body is an expression of spirit, is so much more different than body as just a hook for attraction. It's such a different plane of embodying. It's like, it doesn't matter if you are rounded or flat, if it's an expression of spirit. It's such a different perception of the body and what a body is meant to mean for us. It's just a miracle that we are here in this body. It's not just like, hey, if you're rounded, maybe you will not get the guy with the jaguar.
Yeah. Isn't that true? It's a miracle. Physicality is a miracle.
It is. I remember I was climbing a big mountain here, Mount Adams, which is 12,000 feet, and it was a 2-day climb carrying a 50-pound pack. So it was significant effort, and, really working out to get in shape for it. And when I got to the top of the mountain, it was a big shift in my body awareness of like, oh, this is what this body does. It is built to be able to have this level of strength and endurance. And then I immediately went into past lives of like, well, that Irish background of famine and things like that, that I am certain that in this lifetime I was born with the body I wished for in that lifetime.
Probably.
Yeah. So it's such a whole interesting place to even think about our bodies. And, I remember reading a book, and I can't remember the name of it. It was something about 10 things about being human. And the first one was, well, we all have a body. It doesn't mean we always have, we have a variety of them. But if we're going to be human, we have a body. And so I think learning to love our bodies, and I'm going to go ahead and say it because we did bring up some of the religious parts of it. I do believe one of the teachings of separation really comes from the teachings of original sin, that we were born sinners, and that belief in itself creates separation. and the fear of being in our body than in the self-worth of our bodies and the self-worth of us being human. And so for me, that has been what I did not know needed the healing until the healing occurred for that, to really make that difference. And that was in a Reiki session I was receiving. And then of course it was a process. It was the moment of the understanding of, oh, I need to heal this belief about myself, even though, well, yeah, I guess I was raised with it. Although my parents weren't strict in that way, but they still held that belief. So it's generational. And so I remember the recognition of, oh, that belief is causing me self-worth, separation, injury, and it's not true. That was the big piece, is it's just not true.
And it's very much as how we live it. So I have a cousin, he lives in Spain, right? And he lives his religion beautifully. So I saw them last year, and he tells me, I go to church, I have breakfast at home. Every morning before work, I go to church and I pray in silence. And then I go to work. And I look at him, he's like a Buddhist monk, or like my Reiki practice, right?
Mhm.
So we all live religion differently. And I think you and I, that belief actually got ingrained in our head. For some people, it's not an issue. For me, it was an issue. For me, it's like I saw religion, my body as getting on the way of spirituality. Like literally, as you will say, as something of a separation, like the body. And perhaps it's also more for women than for men. Depends on the country. Depends also of perhaps it was my grandmother the way she was raised. So it's very personal. But I think in my case, you can see it. My mom is also not, she's also not in her body. My mom was also very masculine the way she was raised. So it might be in my family, but I think also it's part of, that culture. But I'm glad we healed it. I hope if anybody else has it, that they can also heal it. I think you mentioned something that was very interesting, that some people cannot even understand that we don't even need to be together because we already are together. I think that's a concept hard to understand unless you experience it. And when you said it, then we know we experience it. I think it's very hard to put into words as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that we can't actually be separate. How would that even be possible? Where are we if we're not all right here? And so that's some of the other teachings that I've had in other modalities as well, where that's a belief about where, the majority of us is out here and there's just a drop in here. And I really believe that Reiki has taught me that it's all in here and we are in it completely. And the challenge of always trying to go somewhere else and somewhen else is part of that continued separation. And so that's what allows, for me, that is what has really allowed me to, you've said it a lot, like how your life has improved, that Reiki has such a practical application. Like it's applied spirituality because it's how it functions in our daily life and makes a difference in our daily life. Yeah. And so that calmness is, of course, for me, I'm super happy with that. Robyn and I have been working with the mantra for the last 4 years of stay stable, be kind, and utilizing that. Yes, just stay stable, be kind. And so helpful. Yeah. So.
Well, I think, oh, sorry, Colleen.
No, go ahead.
I think, as you both have been talking about we can't be separate, the unification indicates that there is a separation to begin with. It's like the process is more about the remembering that we are because I think that's where it's not that we get separated from it, it's that we forget that we are all of this. We are our spirit, that there isn't a separation, that there isn't a unification process that needs to happen. It's more of a remembering of that, the process of remembering that, and the process of being in that remembering in all parts, all aspects of our life, not just when we're in Reiki, when we're in our daily life. Because when it comes down to it, with all of these practice, with all of this work that we do, and when I say work, I mean like this practice of it, is that how does it translate to us as beings in this realm with others, whether it's to ourselves or whether it's to others, being more stable within our life, being kind and compassionate to others, being in those frequencies of love and compassion to others, and in that process of remembering and being in that groundedness, Nathalie, that you're talking about, that feeling of groundedness, that remembering of groundedness, maybe is a better way to say it. And then how does that extrapolate into our world? And obviously it starts with ourselves first, but it also matters in how we interact with our world and being kind and compassionate to others. And so many people, so many sages that talk about that how we help others is part of what matters on this plane. So I think that is too, when it all comes down to it, such a part of what is important. I don't want to say it's the only thing that's important, because that's for each of our own journey to find and to resonate with. But it is such a big piece of it, because if we can only be that when we're in our spiritual practices, it's not to say that that's not important. It is. But at the same time, like, well, then kind of what's the point? I don't know. That's too an extreme. That's an extreme version of what I'm trying to say.
No, but there is a moment where, like, and I think that's what happened to me in my early 40s, right? If I'm just enjoying getting high on energy on the sofa, like once a week or twice a week, or even every day, is that really a spiritual practice, or is it like self-indulgence? Like, if I'm not making a change in the world and in myself, is this truly a deep spiritual practice? And I think that's what we have to question. The answer may be yes, but I have to answer that question. I'm not saying it's not. In my case, it wasn't sufficient. And I think change, for example, it sounds crazy, but we underestimate the power of a smile. I walk around, I smile a lot. Don't ask me why it's my default. And part of it is because I like to smile. It makes me happy, very selfish. But I smile in New York and I see people's face smile. Some days I don't smile and people smile at me. In Harlem, people smile a lot. And I smile back. And I've had cashiers in very bad mood, and I smile to them, and I can see the cashier smiling, and they smile at the person who was in a bad mood. And the opposite. I've had a bad day, and the other day a lady helped me with a bag. Oh my God, the lady changed my whole day. She saved my whole, and I told her, lady, you saved my day. So we're also underestimating. And then I was a much better person the rest of the day, right? Because that was the day my passport got lost, I was a wreck, whatever. But we're underestimating. We don't know what can happen that day. Imagine that you are nice to a person who was having a bad start of the day, and that day they're presenting an exam that matters to them to enter university. And because you smile at them, they're doing a better exam and they got into the university. We don't know the ripples. So we cannot underestimate what we can do with a smile, with opening a door, with making sure we're kind, like with not perhaps being nasty to all the homeless unless they have nice. I'm sorry, I know my references are very New York, but we have crazies. And not judging people who are next to us, and like perhaps giving them way, sometimes waiting for older people that are crossing the street, or like sometimes I see people rushing older people on the escalators or the stairs. Well, perhaps are you really in a rush? If you are, just try to avoid them. But if you are not in a rush, perhaps you should help that elderly person go up the stairs, right? And perhaps they will say, no, they're cranky, but those things are small, but they can make a big change on those people's life. That elderly person perhaps didn't talk to anyone in 2 weeks and they live by themselves, right? So sometimes we don't understand the little things we can do. I've had sometimes people email me like, that day you helped me made a big difference and now I do this. Or like you podcast when you say this, and that may have happened to you with your podcast. Gave me an idea, and now I got an email from someone who now is a professional Reiki practitioner. They had almost like dropped out, and then they heard a podcast, they got inspired again, and now they're teaching people. So that is why for me it's important to sometimes go out of that pillow, because yes, it makes a difference. Like your smile, like not answering back at the cashier, or if we're a cashier, like being able to actually not suffer the 8 hours we are at work, right? Those things matter. Those things help make a better world. And that for me then is spirit. And I think you were like an active spiritual practice. You said something, calling a word, active practice. You say like
applied spirituality.
Yeah, apply spirituality. That I think I want to steal from you. I will put like asterisk by Colleen Benelli, the rights. Apply spirituality really brings the gifts, a lot of gifts. Yeah. And I think this is an invitation. Yes, we may enjoy a spiritual practice in a corner, but apply spirituality then really ripples out. And it's so simple. It's as simple as a smile, holding a door, or not screaming. Sometimes you want to scream as someone is holding the scream. And I know, I'm sorry, New York is all of you who live in peaceful cities, but I feel like, honestly, holding that content, when I see what people are posting on Threads and Instagram and Twitter or X, I'm like, what is happening to these people? Right? And some of these people posting those awful things are Reiki practitioners. And then, like, are you really practicing?
Well, I think your example of in New York is actually even better because it's easy when you live in a peaceful town, like where everybody is, looking out for one another and kind to each other. It's a lot harder in a place where things are harder. And I appreciate your perspective of that, because of also what you said in relation to what I had said. And sometimes we do have to go through that journey of it just being about ourselves for that time, it's possible that maybe you wouldn't have been able to be in the place where you would have received the message of the embodiment had you not been doing the work that you were doing previously to that.
In the pits.
And so many times it just does start with ourselves first. Like we can only be in that practice for like you said, like once a week, and we're just focusing on ourselves. But the good thing about this, and especially Reiki energy, we know that it leads us to wellness. And just that simple act of being in your spiritual practices once a week, just for yourself, can snowball into all of these other things that healing also matters.
And listen, if it makes you every human who hurts a little bit less, that's already a win.
Yeah, it's a big difference.
Exactly.
And if that's what you can do, and that's already a win. Like the fact that you hurt even 0.1% less, that's a win.
That's a win. That matters.
I also love that you use New York as an example. So energetically, when I'm speaking about this subject, because the earth talks about how so often we think of things as human-made or earth-made, like it's either natural or it's human-made. And the earth is like, well, everything human-made is still made of the earth. And so, and then it showed me how the cities like just have this energy and resonance and rhythm and made of the earth, and the earth loves the cities too. And in my mind, when I'm talking about that, I'm always thinking of New York, because the rhythm there and the energy there is so amazing and beautiful and just alive and thriving. And even though I know there's all the other parts of it and the underbelly parts and everything else that go with it, for me, that's always the part that I think of. I'm always imaging in my mind when when I'm talking about how much the earth loves the cities too.
There is a lot of love going on too that people don't see. There is so much love. Like people help each. As soon as something happens, everybody bands together. And then there is, for example, my dojo practice, right? There is such community that forms and love. But we don't see that in the movies. But it's just like it's a very authentic city. People express what they feel, love, hate, and they forget. Whoop, it goes. It's like,
and
but
and
there's
cen- and centers for art and culture and music and these things that are influence, small town rural Oregon where I live. It's like that doesn't come from there. That comes from places like New York.
But I'm sure in small town it's the same thing. I'm
Of
sure
course.
people smile with a fake smile, right?
Yeah.
So that's New York. You can hear the sirens, no? No, good Zoom filter. But I'm sure sometimes they smile like, "Hi, Robyn," and that's not a real smile, right? So I think it's the same here. They just don't put the fake smile, but I think example maybe New York, but I think we can also see it with the world, right? Like now between countries, they are not doing the New York like, "Hey man, I hate you." They're just like bombing each other, right? So, like again, between countries, they bomb. In New York, we push each other. In small towns, it's a fake smile. They're different expression of the same thing. Or in social media, they're just writing awful thing. I think it's just a human thing of. I feel like lately everybody wants to be like right and be separate. Like there is a trend for separation and opposition. And I think Reiki, and I love that you say it's remembering we're not. And it's a little bit like Luke Skywalker, power of the light and the force. So again, every minute we can spend in the space of remembering we're light, reducing our hurt. Before that, we need to be in the body because when we go and our energy goes to the head. So this is the last thing I will add. I'm training now. I found a new monk because obviously I cannot go to my Zen monastery in Japan. Takes time, don't have time, so much to go. And also because I already did it, but I found this beautiful Shin Buddhist monk and very basic English, although he's been here forever. And there is beautiful Buddhist societies here in New York City. So I go once a month in person and then online, and they do something called Seisa meditation. And Seisa meditation is different than the regular Zen because it engages your lower belly a lot, very actively. So it's a little more similar to a Reiki meditation called Joshingo Kyoho, which engages the lower belly. You inhale out and then exhale in, but it's really forceful exhale, bringing like the lower belly towards the spine, and then a very quick inhale. It's called Seisa meditation. And he says men of Hara because he's very traditional Japanese, called people of Hara to be more inclusive. And he keeps saying when people have all the energy here, people go to war and they fight. When people are people of Hara with the energy in your lower belly, people are peaceful and happy. So, and I felt also a transformation. I've been doing it for 6 months and I can see the change in my martial arts. I'm like lower, I'm cutting sharper. But I've seen like these last 6 months, I can see it even at work and I'm like more peaceful. I'm like, that rock is even more of a rock. So, and that also, again, I love this concept. Like, I feel with Reiki, we move into being people of Hara, people of peace. And I think when we go and we're a lot on the phone and watching right or wrong, and I want to be right, and we go a lot in dialogue and discussion, and we forget our heart and our bodies, we're going to be people not of Hara, people of war and people of discussion. I think that, for me, the body, ironically, is the place where we can bring peace to the world. If we go to the mind, the rational mind, not the big spirit mind, it's easier to get into conflict. When we bring our back into the body and the spirit, then we can find peace. And I think that is the last ad. He's adorable. He laughs a lot. Ha 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 ha, Nathalie-san, very straight. He makes fun of my Zen Buddhist practice. Very zen, very straight. Relax, Nathalie-san.
I love it.
That's wonderful. Well, Nathalie, thank you so much for being with us. We always just love our conversations with you. And you can find Nathalie at diveintoreiki.com. And all of her social media is going to be on there. Her podcast is Dive Into Reiki, and that's also released on YouTube. And she also has a Facebook, and you have a Patreon as well, correct?
Yes. And so my word for next year is focus. I'm with my accent. I hope that came out all right. I will be doing a lot on the Patreon next year, a lot of actually bringing all that body, how to use the body in Reiki. So that is also helping support the podcast. And is also supporting the creation of the first book, which is based on the first 21 interviews of the podcast. I was going to do just one book. I realized it's going to be a series of books on 21 interviews. That means your interview will be part of the second book. It's going to be a series of infinite light books. So I engage everyone who wants to check the Patreon or support the podcast through that. And they can check it out at patreon.com/dive into Reiki. I'm not very creative with my handles. Everything is the same.
No, it's good. It means you can find you everywhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are your books on Amazon?
Yeah, the two books are on Amazon. Reiki is a spiritual practice, which is the booklet with all the meditations, a lot of meditation for the Hara, for becoming people of Hara. And then the other book has more about the chakras. I co-wrote it with a girl who knows everything about chakras. I get very confused with chakras. I did more the Reiki part, and it's called the Reiki Healing Handbook, I believe.
Awesome. And Nathalie Jaspar. And Jaspar is Jaspar.
Yes, Jaspar originally. And that book, the last one, is actually translated into French.
Oh, nice.
Jaspar.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Nice.
Well, thank you so much, Nathalie. For Colleen and I, you can find us at ReikiLifestyle.com and all the things, ReikiLifestyle.com.
Thank you so much for having me. And it's such a pleasure to chat and having this wonderful conversation, very much needed in the Reiki world. Thank you.
And I have your artwork too that you gave to us.
Oh, you do?
Right over here. Yeah, it's just
thank you.
So thank you, Nathalie.
Thank
you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you all for listening.